Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Vikings Vent Line every Sunday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and on the Purple Daily podcast feed. On the YouTube side, hit the subscribe button. The like button helps keep spreading the word and helps supporting us at Purple Daily. We appreciate that. On the podcast side, 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, however you consume. We also appreciate that too. Here on Vikings Vent Line, this is your show. If you are a Vikings fan, you've stumbled upon the right place. Vikings Vent Line is a show where I like to bring on fans every week here on Sunday to talk about the offseason. There's my guy Vinny back there taking a snooze. But if you'd also like to be on the show awake and not napping, hit me up. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. If you'd like to join a future episode, that's vikingsventline@gmail.com. I siphon through or go through a bunch of emails every week, try to record these for every weekend. So if you'd like to join me, hit me up, vikingsventline@gmail.com. And shout out to our friends at Standard Heating. Standard Heating, I explained on Wednesday, on Friday, I should say, came in the clutch with their help with me at my new place that I'm going to be buying here very shortly. They're able to take a look at that furnace. Were able to give me some peace of mind going into that housing purchase. That's always a big purchase, and the furnace being one of the biggest ones you invest in. Thankfully, Standard came through in the clutch with that. So if your furnace needs some updates, if you're looking to make sure that maybe you're buying a house and you want to make sure the furnace is working in order, give my friends at Standard Heating a call. Go to standardheating.com to learn more. All right, let's get our guys in here. Let's get my guy Nigel and Phil in here. Fellas, welcome to Vikings Vent Line. Appreciate you guys making some time here. Nigel, you were saying you were on after the Rams loss, the first Rams loss, because the Vikings only lost to 2 teams all season long, despite being a playoff team. So welcome back to Vikings Vent Line. Happy to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And then Phil, what's going on? Welcome to Vikings Vent Line. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Where are you? Are you in you got the New Orleans Vikings jersey there. Is that a Prince jersey?
No. Yeah.
Prince.
No, I'm originally from St. Paul, Minnesota, but I live in Bismarck, North Dakota. Wentz town.
I love it. St. Paul boy myself, so I always love to hear that. And Nigel, where are you calling from?
Southern Ontario, from the Hamilton area. I don't know if you have many Canadians on here.
Just easy to adopt the Vikings being close to the border. How'd we become a Vikings fan?
Oh boy, interesting story actually. I was playing fantasy football in 2019, first time ever, and I didn't know what was going on. Kirk was my quarterback, and I just started. They were pretty good. They started off. I don't know, like they had a good start that year. Yeah, and I just started kind of watching them that way, and then COVID happened, and then that was all that was on TV. So. Yeah, just started watching them and got hooked, and that's when I found you guys and started listening. Yeah, it was just ever since then. That's the story.
I love it. And then Maple Leafs, are we a Toronto fan, I take it?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, there it is. All right, I love it. I figured as much.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you guys hopping on here. Let's start things off here. Phil, I'll start with you. We love to give some hot takes throughout the season, every week, basically on Purple Daily. What is your hottest Vikings take as we kind of enter the first few weeks of the offseason?
I have several takes, but I guess my bold take, the Minnesota Vikings are going to trade Addison to the Niners in return for their 3rd round pick and their 5th round pick.
Okay.
Which is their 75th and 137th pick. I just think that with Addison, we're not going to pick up his contract in my beliefs. He's got red flags already, getting into trouble, and then it'll help us, fill those voids in our draft also.
I like it. I mean, Judd's been kind of on this train as well in the first few weeks of the offseason. And yeah, I mean, is Addison part of the long-term future? Probably not. I don't think he'll be. He's obviously on a very controllable rookie scale contract. Do you want to try to cash in on that ASAP before you have to pay him or just lose him to a comp pick? Yeah, I mean, I can see the point of it. I know some Vikings fans probably are looking at it like, no, you can't take away another weapon for JJ McCarthy. I mean, maybe they find a weapon. Maybe they still make their offense just as good without him. He was a very important part. He's probably also going to be suspended next year for at least a few games because of the off the field incidents that happened before the season started. So there is a case to be made to potentially moving on from him. Nigel, how about you, man? I know you said you've had a couple hot takes that you've been kind of sitting on as well this offseason. What do you got?
Yeah, I really like the Andrew Van Ginkel one. I think that one should happen, but I'm gonna go different. I'm not gonna reuse that one. But speaking of McCarthy, he's gonna have a great year next year. I think he's gonna lead the Vikings to their first NFC North title since 2022, and I think he's gonna finish top 5 in MVP voting in the process. I think this team might not represent record next year. Might not represent. We're not playing the NFC South again, but I think next year, the team's going to be better. I think the offense is going to be cooking. Might have some growing pains, but I think for the most part, we're going to see a really, really good season from JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's tough, I think, for a rookie to step in, lead them, or not a rookie, I should say. First-year starter, though, to step in, lead them to a division title in a crowded NFC North, get top 5 MVP votes would obviously be gigantic. A lot of hype around him, man. I'm excited for him, too. I think he's legit. I'm very excited to see training camp unfold, and obviously pending health and everything else. He's their week 1 starter and good to go, and maybe on track for an MVP year. Yeah, the offense, which was still statistically pretty good last season, it might look different, again, statistically, but it might have a better feel to it, right? It might have a better eye test towards it. And just with not as many sacks like that Darnold was able to take, and not as many clunker games that Darnold kind of mixed in there a little bit at the worst possible times, I can see it. I mean, Phil, how about you, man? Do you think JJ McCarthy has a MVP type season in his first year with the Vikings in him?
Yeah, it's not out of the question. I mean, look at Wentz. He had a great rookie year until he got hurt. But I've been saying this forever since Sam Bradford. We need to address our offensive line, and if we don't address our offensive line, we're constantly going to get bullied. The quickest way to the quarterback is straight up the middle, and that's where we've had holes for I don't know how long. Like I said, since Bradford.
So free agency spending, Phil, is go grab some damn guards, right? I take that's the number one plan for you.
Yeah, Trey Smith, Will Fries. I don't know what Drew Dahlman from Atlanta. I don't know if he's available, but he's one of them. Just definitely for sure that, and obviously Milton Wilkins, I think Milton Williams from Philadelphia. The blueprint was already sold on me with Philadelphia against the Chiefs. That just shows you how important that position is.
Totally. Nigel, before I get to another question here, off-season priority list, offensive line for you, number one as well. What are you kind of looking for the Vikings to bring in here?
Yeah, I think realistically, just bullshit the trenches. I believe really in building in and out. Vikings haven't really done that. And look at the successful teams, the Lions, the Eagles, all those guys that can run the ball really effectively. They can throw the ball effectively, and it all starts with the O-line and the D-line. Mm-hmm. I think that's where you got to start. And honestly, this might be a little off topic, but I don't want to give the bag to Trey Smith. I'd rather spread the wealth a little bit, and we're better in one area than super strong in one area and super weak in another area. That's just
gotcha. Yeah, they have some decisions to make how they want to go about that. Smith probably being the top dog and highest bidder that's going to get the biggest contract. I know he didn't have necessarily a great Super Bowl performance, but I think his body of work probably still outweighs that. Yeah. But you bring up a good point. They have a lot of cap space. They also have a lot of players that are entering free agency, which I guess is a good segue. Phil, are you looking at any players that you're good seeing? I mean, obviously, I think we're all good on Sam Darnold, obviously, and that's mostly just because of the situation with how the season played out, but JJ McCarthy's future too. What other players though are you good saying goodbye to in 2025?
I don't know how we keep Garrett Bradbury. I mean, he must have blackmail on somebody because year after year he just keeps on sticking with us. Ed Ingram obviously has to go. It seemed like every time he stepped back, he was stepping on Kirk Cousins' foot.
It is remarkable that they've kind of just given the shrug emoji or shrug a signal at every offensive line guard that they've kind of put out there, right side or left side. And Bradbury, he's okay, but yeah, move on. There's so many better options out there, and there's just a better way to go about addressing that center position. offensive line is definitely one that you want to be able to finally look like the Eagles eventually. It might not look like Philadelphia overnight. I think that's hard to do. But good news is, look, Darisaw and Brian O'Neill are two tackles that you got foundations in the house, right? Like that stuff's already set up. Now you just got a leaky window or two that is causing a draft here. It's driving up your electric bill. You got to figure out how to patchwork that to make sure you got a nice, efficient home. So, I think them trying to figure out how they want to go about fixing the offensive line is a big one, and that means saying goodbye to obviously Bradbury, who's been here for a while, a former first-round pick. I think the Vikings will have to do it. Nigel, how about you though, man? What players are you good on? Moving on, what do you want to see the Vikings move on from into 2025?
Yeah. I was going to say Sam Darnold. I'm pretty sold on getting rid of him, but Bradbury, obviously, I'm kind of like, there's no obvious one for me. I was thinking about Will Reichard, and I'm like, that's a little too harsh. Give him another year. Oh no, I'll say David Quessenberry. Every time he stepped on the field, it just seemed like he was getting bulldozed by somebody. I'm like, I don't want to, I don't know. No starters really come to mind that I'm just like, yeah, I want to get them out of here. So I'll say David Quessenberry just to answer the question. And go
the poor guy was having to play out of necessity because of injuries, and that's where your depth obviously always gets tested on an offensive line like that. Aaron Jones, Nigel, do you want to see the Vikings bring him back, or are you good with just probably drafting a new one and finding another free agent running back?
Yeah, I don't mind running the tandem. I think that's okay, but I don't know. I thought Jones was actually pretty good this year. He was able to squeak out a couple extra yards after he got hit and all that. I still think he's got some gas in the tank. But Thor's guy, RJ Harvey, and all those guys, if they could land Travion Henderson, however, that would be fantastic. But I don't know. I don't mind bringing Jones back for another year, maybe Akers, even if you could ride with that for half the season, maybe introduce another running back. I think that could work, but I don't know. That's where my head's at right now.
Phil, if you had to pick between Byron Murphy and Cam Bynum, which one would you rather see the Vikings bring back if they can't bring back both players?
Murphy.
Yeah.
He was pretty reliable. He's solid. That's just my first take opinion on it.
Yeah, it's hard to find reliable cornerbacks. Obviously, it's very tough to do that. And Murphy, had a shaky first year with the Vikings. Last year, he turned himself into one of the better ones. He's in position to potentially get a big-time payday, whether it's by the Vikings or someone else. But I think they can't really go into the season with and I think Mekhi Blackman will be a good player for them coming off ACL surgery, but that's still a tall task. And Gilmore and Shaq Griffin, serviceable players, maybe even exceeded expectations, but again, up there in age and just not shut down players. It's a pass-happy league. I know the Eagles were able to run down everyone's throat, but that's kind of maybe the anomaly situation. So, yeah, I can see them obviously bringing back Byron Murphy as well. Before I get to one more question for you guys, Phil, in the draft, are you looking to kind of sew up anything? What positions are you kind of looking up for the Vikings to fix in the draft? Offensive line? More just get every type of offensive lineman and defensive lineman?
Yeah, it just depends on what we do in free agency and what direction we're going to go on. That kid from Iowa, running back Johnson.
Yeah.
He's a player that I'd like to see on our team if we ain't gonna keep Aaron Jones, because I think he's gonna want a little bit too much money for what he's worth.
Nigel, how about you, man? Any draft targets, any positions you want to see the Vikings address in this year's draft?
Yeah, defensive tackle, corner, I think are probably the two ones I'm looking to go for. I like Walter Nolan a lot. I think that's what they're looking for. I think he really fits the bill. Kenneth Grant's another one I like. Jahdae Barron's interesting. Or bringing another safety in just to kind of fit the scheme. I don't know. It's interesting. I think I'd probably say Walter Nolan would be my number one guy if I could pick. That's probably ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to figure out what they want to do, whether it's trading back. I know Vikings fans don't want to hear that. They only have 3 picks, though, in the draft, so I can see kind of both sides working there for the Vikings, sticking and picking, or maybe moving back to get some couple extra picks. Phil, favorite Viking of all time? Who is the first Vikings player that maybe you remember as a kid or as you got into adulthood that you love the most? I kind of love asking Vikings fans who their favorite players were when they were growing up, or just of all time.
All time, it's easy for me. It's John Randall. I love his story. with the log chains putting around his waist just to make weight. He always had a motor on him, had heart, and he was always a thorn in Brett Favre's side. So that he was one of my favorite players of all time.
Yeah, it's always a good one. Do you have a least favorite player? I'm curious, Phil. A least favorite Viking that you're just like, I was so sick of him or didn't like him as a Viking? Who comes to mind for that one?
Probably Bradbury.
Bradbury, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just, and anytime there's a solid defensive tackle right in front of him,
Yeah,
it just, there was no hope. And especially when we had Kirk Cousins, it just, he wasn't getting away.
I like it. Yeah. I mean, I grew up with Dante. Dante was probably still is one of my favorite players. Moss too, obviously, I was spoiled to be able to catch him. In terms of least favorite ones, that's a good one. I mean, I didn't love Kirk, but he's not my least favorite Vikings player of all time by any means. Troy Williamson probably comes to mind. Just terrible. Blair Walsh at the end, that was not a good thing after the Seattle game. Poor guy, I think, just had mental problems after that, so he just couldn't be able to get through after shanking that kick. So a couple ones there for me, I think. Nigel, I know you're new to this. I know I've only been since 2019, but who is your favorite Vikings player of all time?
You know, that Packers game in 2020 when Dalvin Cook went off for 4 touchdowns, that was like, I think I got to go Dalvin Cook. That was my first favorite player. I started watching him. I still really like him to this day. It broke my heart when they released him. I like Jefferson too. I know that seems kind of cliche, but like I've seen his entire career. I don't know. I like that, but I'd probably say Dalvin Cook. That's my number one right there.
See, that's the good thing about Vikings Vent Line and Purple Daily. We welcome new fans into the show, whether you're a grizzled vet, whether you've been watching this team your whole life, or you're like Nigel, who has just kind of stumbled upon becoming a Vikings fan over the last few years. It's all good, man. And then go down a YouTube rabbit hole. Go watch Randy Moss highlights. Go watch AP highlights. There's plentiful. Go watch some John Randall's highlights with the war paint on. There's a lot of great players to root for, and hopefully, for knock on wood's sake and this whole show's sake, the Vikings obviously win one before we die. Fellas, before we wrap up here, Phil, any final takes you want to get off your chest here before we say goodbye? Oh no, did we lose Phil? Here, I'm gonna put Phil in off the side for a second. Nigel, how about you, man? Any last takes before we say goodbye? Phil, I'll get to you in just a minute.
I got a football take. I think next year's the year. I think Metallica's coming back for Super Bowl 60. I think they're going to host the halftime show. I was pretty disappointed by that Kendrick Lamar one. I'm like, just got to bring out the big dogs. We got Enter Sandman going on that big stage. I think that's what everyone's hoping for Super Bowl 60. But yeah, that's my only take, I'd say.
I love that. No, I love that. I mean, they've kind of gone with 2 years ago it was, a lot of rappers from LA. Obviously they did it again with Kendrick being from Compton, but I feel like when they go one way, they like to go the opposite the next. So a heavy metal rock band, some type of performance next year. I love that. That's a good one. I dig that a lot. Phil, I think we got you back now. Any final takes here to wrap things up on Vikings Vent Line?
Just a big shout out to Quezzy, KOC, the Will family for the awesome job they've been doing for the past 3 years of bringing in free agents. I mean, last year was a perfect example of just how impactful those type of players can be. And with the money that we have this year in cap space, I think we can, double that down and just improve more. And you never know how far that's going to lead us.
Yeah, very pivotal year for the Vikings, how they want to build things out with a lot of cap space and entering the JJ McCarthy era, hopefully for the foreseeable future. Phil, Nigel, appreciate you guys coming on Vikings Vent Line here. Appreciate your takes, some awesome ones. If anyone wants to come on a future episode of Vikings Vent Line, you can do so by hitting me up at vikingsventline@gmail.com. Hit the like button, subscribe button here on Purple Daily, where we just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die.